Welcome, everyone. Welcome to Unifying Psychotherapy. And we are live here. We are live streaming to YouTube. And welcome. So we are going to get started here in just a minute. So welcome to Unifying Psychotherapy, evolving beyond a patchwork of incompatible theories toward a single framework that synthesizes all of the field's theories and evidence base. Let's go. So welcome, everyone. Welcome to Unifying Psychotherapy. As you are logging in, please go ahead and let us know where you're from. So hop on the chat, let us know your name and where you are in the world. Just let us know where you're from. It's always kind of fun to meet people from all over. And it's really kind of a special day where we get to connect with folks, mental health practitioners from all over the world. We got South Africa, Tennessee, Nevada, California, Atlanta, Georgia, New York. Wow, this is going so fast. I can't even catch it all. Holy moly. Welcome, everyone. Missouri, Mississippi, Maryland, Kentucky. I like you guys got an alphabetical order. Nice. Orange County, California, New York City, Austin, Colorado, Canada, Jamaica, UK, Chicago, Aloha, Hawaii, Montana. Love it. Oh, one of my own students from CSUN. Woohoo! Welcome. My students who have to suffer through me tomorrow. Welcome, Florida, Los Angeles, Paris, Oklahoma, Colorado, love it. Hawaii Island, Big Island, love it. Washington State, Alberta, Canada, Santa Barbara, MFT student from New York, woohoo! Welcome, everyone. CIIS in San Francisco. Love it. See one of my CSUN matadors. Woohoo! Welcome, everyone. So thrilled to have you here for this special event. And I'm really excited and passionate about what we're talking about today. So let's go ahead and get started. So first thing, we're going to do a little mini self-assessment to get us all started. And then I'm going to be talking about unifying frameworks, what they are and whether or not we need one. And then I will be giving you an overview of really my life's work, which is the Therapy That Works Unifying Framework. I am just so thrilled to be able to be in a place where I feel like I'm ready to share it with the world. We're going to be looking at some of the foundations, its evolution, and then the 6 main components, and also looking at some real life examples about how this plays out in the contemporary mental health practice. And last but not least, we will be talking about where to go from here. I'll be kind of sharing what I believe to be the inevitable vision of where we are going as a field in terms of both practice and training. As many of you know, I'm a professor, so training is close to my heart. And for those of you who are really curious about how to learn more about how to work in this way, I'll also be sharing a little bit about that at the end of today's workshop. So let's go ahead and get started. So as you know, this is free continuing education. I'm so thrilled to be able to share this with the world. And you can get your CEs for the live session today. And if you end up watching the recording of this, they will be available through March 5th. But the goal here is to really help you understand and conceptualize how this work can be done with a unifying framework that really pulls together all the theory and a research base. And hopefully at the end, you will know the 6 elements of the unifying framework for psychotherapy. You'll be able to identify the 4 levels using case conceptualization to really synthesize 50 different theories. And then finally, the 5 pillars of wellness to really support our clients with long-term, lifelong change. So how are you going to get your CEs? Hopefully you've all logged in to the online course at therapythatworksinstitute.com. You can go to the login there, and the CE module will open at the end of this webinar. this workshop. You'll find all the PowerPoints will be uploaded there, as well as the references that I'll be citing throughout the workshop. So you'll get everything you need, PowerPoints, reference list, and your CEs in the online course. Plus, there is that bonus intervention. I hope you enjoyed that. So let's go ahead and start with a brief self-assessment. So where are you on a scale from 1 to 10? So my first question is, and you can go ahead and put this in the chat if you would like, but how often do you feel stressed out about your work? So on a scale of 10, it would be most days you feel stressed about work. 1 is maybe 1 day a month you're kind of feeling stressed. So just, there's obviously no right or wrong here, but I'm just curious, go ahead and put some numbers in the chat there. What do we got? 6, 5, 10. Whoa. 6, 8. Wow. Most of these are definitely above 5. So that's not surprising, actually. But yeah, look at these numbers. I like this. I got some 1s and 2s in here, but most of these are, I would say 6, 7 is probably the average. Awesome. So now next, how often are you unsure about the best way to help a client? So go ahead, put your numbers in the chat. I'd see 9, 1, 2, 8, 9. Okay, these numbers are coming in a bit higher, I would say, on average. Got some lower ones here, but yeah, we got folks from the whole spectrum. But in general, and then finally, let's look at how often do you feel like you have a difficult client or a difficult session? So go ahead. How often would you say you've had a difficult session? Here, rarely, 10, 8, 3, 4. Wow, this is interesting. These are a little more bimodal there. So either not often or quite often. So anyway, this is just a place to start and just kind of looking and beginning the conversation of why in the world do we possibly need a unifying framework? So these numbers do tend to average above 5, and there are lots of reasons, I think, for this. The main reason is there really is a large gap between what we know, what is cutting edge practice, what we know from research, and what the average clinician is doing. And this is true across all of medicine, physical medicine, mental health. There's always been at least a 20-year gap between what we consider standard practice and what is cutting edge knowledge, what we know works, best, or best practices. So, and I would, and this number of 20 really comes from the 20th century. And I would say that as we enter the 21st century, and we've really experienced this knowledge explosion, and that this number is only growing. It is not getting smaller. It is getting larger. So this is concerning, because I would say it's harder and harder to actually keep up with what we know it works best. And so I think that creates a lot of stress in the field. We also have a history of our field of being theoretically pure. And, most of us will learn how to use 2 or 3 theories well, or approaches. And that's just historically how it's been in our field. And I don't know if it's really humanly possible to use more than 2 or 3 theories well, but that really does limit, what any one individual practitioner knows. And so, and the other reason I think a lot of these numbers are high is I think as a profession, we have done a horrifically bad job at helping prepare the clinician for the personal human side of doing this work well. There is a very unique stress to being a mental health practitioner. And, we talk about self-care, go meditate, get your own therapy or, personal counseling, but that's about all we offer clinicians. And I think that really contributes to the stress that so many people report, the high levels of burnout. We've had a lot of people, leave the field during the pandemic because of just the stress. And so I think this really is an important topic. And as you step back and you look at the field of mental health, whether you're on the inside or on the outside of it, I think one thing that is very obvious is that our knowledge and our practice is really fragmented. I think that's the best word for it. There are over 500 recognized theories, many of which contradict each other, saying, well, they're doing it wrong and they're doing it wrong. No. This is you can't do that. And, oh, you've got to do this. So there's just lots of theories, and many of them contradict each other. That is really confusing, not just for someone learning to do it, this work, but just for the consumer. Like, how do I know which one of you to go help me? Because you all contradict each other. And there really is minimal access to meaningful research in the field. And I would say there's virtually no clinician friendly for someone who's doing the standard full-time work in the field, 25 to 30 hours of clients. There's no simple, streamlined, easy way for the average clinician to access relevant research. And this is not true in medicine. They have lots of databases and books and encyclopedias and that physicians can go to quickly get cutting edge knowledge. We don't have this in this field, and that really is a problem. And that is something I think even consumers can tell when they talk to us. It is a problem. And there really is no consistency. So if you need, and I bet many of you have tried to help family and friends over the last few years, try to access mental health care. You can go to 100 different practitioners and have 100 different, treatment plans and approaches. It's chaos. It is like the wild, West. And this would never be tolerated in physical medicine. If you got a cold, you want to be able to go to your doctor and kind of get a standard treatment. And we kind of expect the doctors to be, 80% on the same page. And in mental health, we are like all over the board, and it's very, very chaotic. And, I believe that there was a time in medicine when medicine was a lot more like this, and they certainly have unified and streamlined and standardized. And I think we need it for our own mental health. And I think consumers need it also, because it's very hard to navigate contemporary mental health and access the help that you need. So, and the other thing as a fragmented field is that there is a lot of, for lack of a better term, like infighting, right? There's a lot of, it breaks my heart when I hear the disrespect for different licenses or people who work with different, therapeutic approaches, as if, one license or one approach is better than another. And that really isn't healthy. And I understand where it came from, because for many years, at least in the United States, everyone's trying to vie, for a piece of the pie and to, make sure that they can make a living. And so that's where a lot of that infighting came from. But let's face it, there's more than enough mental health work to go around. There are more people who need our help than there's professionals to help them. There is a lack of qualified mental health professionals. So I really think it is time that we can all really be supportive and have each other's backs, and not feel like there's some kind of competition we're in with each other, because everyone is coming to this work to make a difference in some of the most intimate parts of a person's life. And I think we really need to respect what every professional and every approach brings to the table. So, and I would say it's not just us who want something better. I think society, consumers, they find us a really hard profession to navigate and to get the help that they need. And this became really clear for me in the last few weeks. I in my life, over my career, I've been doing this for 30 years. I've talked about a lot of, cutting edge topics. And it wasn't until I started talking about a unified framework for mental health and psychotherapy that TED Talks have actually, the folks, they're trying to recruit me to do a TED Talk for unifying a framework, which really, unifying framework for psychotherapy is a pretty, I think, academic sounding title, right? But this is what they want to hear about. I have talked about mindfulness. I've talked about mindfulness for chocolate lovers. Come on, who doesn't want to know about that, right? mindfulness for families, mindful screen time for families. I was talking about screen time for families and mindfulness during the pandemic. I've done simulated reality training. I'm one of the first ones to do that in the whole field of mental health. I've done a lot when the DSM-5 came out. I talk about using collaborative practices in totally innovative ways around the globe, right? I talk about license exam, racial, age, and class disparities. But, what Ted wanted to hear from me about is this unifying framework. And I really do think, and it kind of surprised me, but I think it really makes sense because there's so many people who are frustrated trying to access the right mental health care. And from where they're coming from, we're all doing something kind of different. And what would it be like if mental health, was a lot more easy to access? And so the question is, is the field ready for this? But I think it's a real important topic. And I've just really been surprised at even how people outside the field have really taken an interest in the possibility of having more streamlined ways for mental health practitioners, so everyone's kind of just clearer about what's going on. So let's talk about whether or not mental health is ready for a unifying framework. So what is a unifying framework exactly? A unifying framework organizes a whole bunch of diverse perspectives into a single streamlined system. Typically is a streamlined system for how to do something. And a lot of how these get developed is you take the overlying concepts and labels from different theories, and you kind of find a common language there. So it's a lot of streamlining, a lot of jargon is what happens in unifying frameworks. And let's face it, mental health, we've got jargon. Any of those of you who are, studying for licensing exams, we got jargon. And what we're seeing is across many disciplines, right? We're experiencing in almost every discipline a knowledge explosion, and it is impossible for any single practitioner to keep up with it. And there really was a time when I could do like exhaustive literature reviews, and that is extremely, extremely rare. And the knowledge explosion in our field is mind-boggling. I mean, not only do we have our 500 theories and evidence-based treatments, we have all the research for that. We now have quality research to be kept up on. We have the neurobiology. We have physical medicine and mental health. We've identified over 20, different physiological correlates. There's positive psychology. There's just so many different areas where our field, the knowledge, it's impossible for any one person to keep up with. And even when you try, you're never 100% up to date. There's just no way. And this is happening in lots of different fields. So even within the field of psychology more broadly, it's the research psychologists have started developing these unifying frameworks. There's a unifying framework for well-being constructs. So this is positive psychology. Because when you think of research, what is actually happening? I know each study is a ton of work, but what happens is, this one person does their study, which in the big scheme of things is just one puzzle piece. And then the next person is going to do another research study, and they need to match up those constructs so that the knowledge base can move forward, because every research study kind of fits together in this big overarching puzzle that moves the knowledge forward. So this is why researchers really do need to have some unifying frameworks, because they're going to be able to move knowledge forward more quickly, more confidently, quite frankly. So also within psychology, we have the unifying framework for factors of visual attentional processing. There's another one for unifying framework for individual differences and mental representations of emotional processing. There's another unifying framework for trauma memory processing with PTSD. So the researchers are finding that these unifying frameworks really enable them to move research forward more easily and more coherently. And then when you look outside the field of psychology, there's a unifying framework, educational framework. There's another unifying framework for early childhood education. There's another one So computer science definitely has the most. I could have done just multiple slides on computer science, but they have one for structural analysis, design models. There's another one for a unified framework for software engineering. And then perhaps the most famous one of all is the unified field theory in physics, where they're trying to find a single theory that accounts for both quantum mechanics as well as Newtonian. So many theories are looking at these unifying frameworks to deal with the knowledge explosion that we are experiencing in all disciplines. And because it's just too much for an individual practitioner to actually keep up with it all, and then to be able to actually use it in practice, because that's really what these frameworks are about. How do we take all of this knowledge and make it accessible to a practitioner? So let's look at whether or not mental health actually needs a unifying framework. So if you look at the licensing exam, I actually do prep for the marriage and family licensing exams. There are 16 to 20 different theories on the average licensing exam, but the average clinician is probably using no more than 2 to 3. So it's a lot. It is a ton of where the focus goes when you're preparing for these exams. As we already mentioned, there are over 500 different psychotherapy approaches. And this is an issue not just for the new folks coming through who are totally confused. You know, in my graduate program, my students are exposed to about 25 different theories, which I think is too much, but they need it for the exam. And then they need those last 5 for the practice environment, because what the employers are using are evidence-based treatments that are largely not on the exams. So the average new person coming in who's here is, you know, just swimming in just way too many models. And believe it or not, this also is hard on the poor supervisors who've been in the field for 20 years, who have people waltzing into their, you know, supervision group saying, I want to use XYZ theory, and the supervisor maybe never even heard of it, let alone is trained in it. It's just very fractured. It even can stir up imposter syndrome, not even in the new folks, but trust me, I talk to supervisors and it stirs it up in the supervisors who've been doing this for years. It's too much. It's too many theories. And, you know, what we're seeing is just very high levels of burnout in the field. And there is definitely research that says that the evidence-based treatments that have come in has really contributed to this. So like my students who go through my program in the Los Angeles area, I mean, we expose them to all the theories they need for their exam, because that's our job as a university, you know, and then they go to the field and then they learn all these other things that they didn't, you know, we touched on in graduate school, but now it's a whole new world. It's exhausting. I don't know how else to say it. It's exhausting. And when you look at our current training, our training isn't unified. And I'm clearly in this business because, you know, at the academic level, we are required, this is our job, and even postgraduate training, we're looking at theories, diagnosis, the research, laws and ethics. You know, then you go to the field, right? And you get your training there with your clinical supervisors, where it's all very practice-based, and they use very little of the language that you learned in graduate school, which makes my students crazy. And I think it makes most trainees crazy. It's like, it feels like there's this huge, you know, gulf, you know, between what you learn in the university and what you need to know for your licensing exams, and then what you actually do when you arrive at a site and you're doing the work. And then mixed in with all of this is the self-care of the therapist, which, you know, that's kind of handled primarily through personal psychotherapy. But again, it's very disjointed. There obviously are places where these things overlap. But, you know, as I listen to people who are going through being trained, and even to people who've been doing this for a while, there is this sense of, it's just very disjointed and it's not very unified. And, you know, and also here, I think, you know, what we do as mental health providers, no matter where we are in the world, is really one of society's most important jobs, especially at this time in history. And this work should be as easy as humanly possible for the practitioner. And I really do not think we have set up our graduate training, our postgraduate training. I don't think we've set up the knowledge base to make it easy for the individual practitioner. In some ways, we've made it as hard as humanly possible. There's a lot of flexibility, but you're swimming and like, what do I do? And what do I learn? And what do I go get trained in? it's chaotic. It really, really is. And really everyone suffers. We suffer burnout, imposter syndrome, and our clients also suffer because it's hard for us to really meet their needs as best as humanly possible and to access all of the information that is actually out there to help our clients. So I'm going to talk about how this unifying framework that I have been developing, and I just want to start by talking about how I even arrived at it, And as I'm going through this, you'll notice that there's both a chat where you can chat with other folks who are here, and you can also put questions for me to answer at the end in the Q&A. So the Q&A, those come straight to me, and the chat is a great place to chat with others and share your reactions. So as many of you know, I have been writing textbooks for better part of 3 decades here. And when I first decided to write textbooks, I made myself a promise that I would approach other people, all the different theories in the field from a place of what is called appreciative inquiry. Appreciative inquiry is an approach that is used in terms of research as well as business consultation. And it's when you come to learn about someone else or, some other ideas from a place of appreciating what is the wisdom here. Because any theory that was big enough to, for me to need to put it in a textbook had to say something. And I like to use this word of wisdom. There's wisdom there about the human condition that was precious, that was helpful, that has helped thousands, hundreds of thousands of people. And so I really came to the work of summarizing the best and the brightest in the field with what can I learn from this person, even if this wasn't my favorite theory or the one I ended up training myself in, one of my 2 or 3 favorites, what is it? And I really disciplined myself to understand these perspectives and the wisdom that each approach has. And so I really came to that, and also saying, what do my students need? What do employers need? What does the field need to know about these theories? And there was also, which really got me practiced on being very, very focused on what is practical, what do you need, how do you use these ideas, how do you apply them in contemporary settings, was really what my audience wanted to know is, what do I do with all this theory? And so I came to this work of writing theory with really trying to appreciate the wisdom and get as much as I can down, and then also how do you use it? And what happened when I came at things, patterns really started to emerge. So when you really focus on what people are doing in the room, what all these 50 different therapeutic approaches are doing in the room, there is really more in common than not in common. And so one of my, I remember when I was writing one of my theory and treatment planning and counseling and psychotherapy book, and I can't remember if it was the first or second edition, but I remember just one day sitting there as I was wrapping up the book, I'm like, oh my God, every single major school of counseling theories that I summarized had evolved to have some postmodern iteration really to deal with diversity and social justice issues. I'm like, wow, that was like so surprising to me, because often they all talk like they're at war with each other, but I'm like, they've evolved in very similar ways for contemporary work. The other thing I noticed is that many, many different theories track complementary patterns. And this is actually the essence of of how they conceptualize in so many different approaches that are so different. I mean, psychodynamic, Jungian, Fritz Perls, system, structural, intergenerational, all of these, and they have such different jargon and vocabulary for how you look at complementarities. This can be interlocking pathologies. This can be, different archetypes, the different parts of the self, in systems and structural, you're looking at triangles and different types of, engaged and, engaged, enmeshed, boundaries, intergenerational, but they use such different concepts, such different language, But the essence there across all of them is looking at these complementary patterns, these polarities. Really IFS, all of these are looking at complementary patterns and using totally different theoretical justification and language, but the essence there was really similar. In fact, there is a day that is one of my books I'm going to write, just complementary patterns across all the different theories. It really is a fascinating subject. It's on my long list of things to do. And then so that's one of the things I'm noticing. And then actually coming out of the research end of things, there's this whole common factors movement that has been out for a couple of decades now, where the researchers are finding, you know what, folks, it's really, you all psychotherapy theories, all 500 of you, you have more in common, in terms of what's working. There are these common factors that are creating those positive outcomes. And, your theories are just 15% of that pie. And that even the common factors research is identifying that, yeah, there's more in common than not across these theories. And we need to be focusing on that 85% of the pie that is really accounting for most of the outcome. The thing with common factors research, though, is that even though it's identifying that something's going on, there's more in common than different that's causing, these positive outcomes, but it's not boiled down to a place where it's truly practical in terms of guiding the practitioner in session, but they're clearly identifying that there's something more in common than different here. And so when I talk about a unifying framework today, what I am talking about is not integration or eclectic. And the best word I can come up with is synthesis, because integration or eclectic is you're combining some existing parts from various theories, you put them together to come up with a new approach. So I think emotionally focused couples therapy is a great example. You take some attachment theory and, humanism and systems and throw in a little structural enactment, and boom, you have, this integrative, it's an evidence-based couples approach but you've clearly taken parts that are still recognizable and put them together into a new evidence-based treatment. So that's 5 different theories right there out of the 500. So what synthesis is different. It's about boiling down. It's about streamlining. It's about getting to the essence and to a framework. Okay. So a unifying framework doesn't explain necessarily why people do what they do, why symptoms develop. That's what theory has a lot more explanation to it, where a framework is a synthesis, and it's a framework that's going to guide practice. It doesn't necessarily explain human behavior. And so one of my favorite examples here is just unique outcomes and exceptions. So there was a conference where you have Steve DeShazer, debating with Michael White over how solution-focused exceptions are different from narrative unique outcomes. And this has also been written up in a book chapter. And they're right. Theoretically, I agree totally 110%. Unique outcomes, exceptions, they are theoretically different constructs. They are different things. These are different approaches. Totally 100% get it. But for the person sitting in the room across from a client, they're basically the same thing. Would you have expected the problem to happen, but it didn't. And so when you're in the room, the utility of these theoretical constructs just collapses. It's not practical. In fact, it's unhelpful to have the 2 different constructs, because that's not going to help you focus in the session. It needs to be far simpler than that. So let's talk about what is being synthesized in a unifying framework. As I've said, 50 different theories of traditional counseling and MFT. But then there is the research and evidence base, and this is the hardest thing for the average clinician to actually access. So obviously there are the thousands of studies on specific approaches and what works and what doesn't, and then looking at that for specific populations, especially with the evidence-based treatments, because evidence-based treatments, as we've talked about, are typically integrating, some of the main 50, theories and putting them into combining them in a unique way to work better for specific issues or populations. Then there's this whole field of positive psychology and wellness research that I don't know why mental health is not more hooked up with, what actually is correlated with, happiness. Because if you don't know, if you're not familiar with that, it's another workshop I give. The average human is really bad at predicting what's going to make them happy. And so it's important for mental health professionals to understand all that psychology so that we actually set goals and priorities that are going to actually work. And just even what it takes for long-term, lifelong wellness. There are mountains. They're very clear. We'll talk some about that. It's so important. I'm putting it into this workshop. Just what it takes for wellness. And this is, again, it's almost inexcusable that we're not better at talking about these things. Then there's this huge other area of research, which is daunting and overwhelming, which is the neurobiology and physiological research. So what we have learned about the brain in the last few decades and how that relates, especially to chronic, difficult to treat mental health issues, is huge. And then there's all the physical health. There are over 50 different physiological correlates, like hormones, the microbiome, genetics, nutritional deficiencies, diet, exercise, just being outdoors. All of this is also some other knowledge that we need to understand and be able to access. And this is some of the hardest information for the average clinician to access and even to partner with the necessary referrals we need to act on this to help our clients, especially those with chronic conditions. And then there's this whole other layer of research around motivation, social psychology, that, again, it is mind-blowing to me that as a profession where our work, we are required to help clients set goals and achieve goals, we don't actually know the basic mechanics of how to help people make real life sustained change. Our theories do very little of that. And there is a lot more research out there on how you actually get someone who's living a busy, stressed out life to truly make lasting change in their life. Our field of mental health, we don't even use half of what's available to us out there. So there's just so much knowledge that the average clinician can actually benefit, especially in this area of research and the evidence base, that is just rarely even touched on, rarely in a textbook, rarely in a continuing education course. And then finally, there's just the self of the research, self of the clinician research, where, if you look at the research, who we are as humans, how we show up in the room, and how we connect with others is, I don't care which stream of research you're looking at, it is the most important variable. So, and yet we have, it is one of the most neglected areas in the field. I challenge you to find a continuing education course that really deals with this head on. Challenge you to look at your graduate curriculum and where this was dealt with. This is one of the most neglected areas in the field. And there are very few models for even doing this, because it's pretty much go get your own, therapy or professional counseling and, do some self-care. You'll be good. Just a little mindfulness, just toss that in. But I really think we can develop much more robust models. And I think we need to do it for ourselves, for those who are coming up through the pipeline to join this profession. I think this piece has been long overdue for us to actually be addressing. Okay, so let's go ahead. I'm going to share with you. I'm going to start with a big overview of the framework. And then I'm going to kind of highlight what is truly unique and what I think is the magic that makes it work. And then I'm going to walk you through 6 different areas and kind of talking about how different people have actually found these, how this has worked for different clinicians to help them both personally and professionally. So the 6 components. The first is the self of the clinician. Like I said, it's neglected, and I start there because if you don't have this rock solid in place, everything else is hard. So we'll be talking about what I believe, all of us need a lifelong plan for personal development to really keep us from burning out, to sustain us, and so that we have great lives too. Heck, we need to have a good life too. And then collaborative connecting is this, it's about how you build relationships. And there's a very specific type of relationship that I really believe is transformational and really makes the difference and really is key to this whole unifying framework. The 4-level conceptualization of the problem. This is like assessment or how you case conceptualize. And this is truly where we melt down 50 different theories to 4 basic levels. And for many people, this is the best part of the whole thing, because this is where the stress totally gets alleviated and really supercharges how they work with people. Because when you can use 50 theories rather than 2 or 3, things really, really come together quickly in your clinical work. Then there is the evidence-based treatment planning, which is understanding what does the research say tends to work for your client and their type of problems. Then there is evidence-informed intervention. What are those interventions and how do you, which theories, do you need to really be paying attention to? There are certain symptoms that people can have that certain things definitely work better. And there are others where you have a lot more flexibility in terms of how you address that. And then finally there is the 4-level conceptualization of wellness and solutions. And this is how you solidify gains. And again, I think it's a very underdeveloped approach, piece of our work. And so that is the 6th part of the unifying framework. So I want to start, though, by first talking about the key to making this whole framework work and why it has been so effective. So there are 2 parts. So obviously we are synthesizing a lot of theory and a lot of research. And so it makes it possible for an individual clinician to know a whole lot, which is super, super helpful. But the other piece that makes this framework work is that you're meeting clients where they are at. You are working within their worldview, not the practitioners. And when you learn to be able to work within the client's worldview, or what I would call their meaning-making system, when you do that, change happens rapidly. And there's a lot of research behind this as well. And the one way to think about it is what we're doing is we're taking the entirety of the research base and we are turning it inside out. So what that means is we are taking all of the theory, research, and evidence base, and rather trying to get our clients to come over to how we think and our language and our jargon, we are walking into their world and seeing where all this knowledge kind of fits in to how they understand their problems, how they understand their world. And so there's this very natural fit that happens with our work. And so all of our work is cross-culture. You're always working cross-culturally because every individual's meaning-making system is truly unique to themselves. Even if someone looks like you, similar age, gender, racial, ethnic background, religious background, ability, education level, sexual orientation, no matter how similar they are, their meaning-making system is unique to them. And, you need to work within that to really achieve quick and lasting change. And this is really key in working in today's very diverse world, wanting to really meaningfully address social justice issues. Entering the client's meaning-making system is really central to doing that well. Because in our traditional world, a lot of what we did is we taught our clients our models, we taught our clients our jargon, and there are times where that can be helpful, absolutely, but that's not where you start. Okay, we taught them our worldview and our perspectives. And often, these models, our mental health models, are, biased in terms of values and beliefs. And sometimes that fits for our clients and sometimes it really doesn't. And it's hard to know. And that is also why a lot of approaches don't work with certain, racial, ethnic groups, across gender differences. There's a lot of, gender differences, social, economic class, education, LGBTQ. And so we need to be very careful that we don't drag our clients into our language, our frameworks, because when you can enter the client's meaning-making system, and, as you understand it, to see how the knowledge base we have, which you have synthesized for you, fits or doesn't fit what it really becomes magical, because the client is, first of all, most of us are not consciously aware of our own meaning making systems and how we put all those, we're semi-aware of some of it. So as they begin to understand how they make sense of their world, they have incredible insights. And these are insights, though, that can't be rejected because they come from within their world. They had them. We didn't give them an insight. We didn't give them a great interpretation. We didn't give them a great, kind of theoretically based, insight. These are naturally occurring, organic, from within the client insights that can't go away. You can't unsee the insight that you just saw as you began to understand, how your world fits together. And there really is this incredible organic ripple effect where change cannot not happen, because they're beginning to see and understand their world in a new way. So this is just so important in terms of being culturally appropriate, but also motivating. As you learn to work within a client's meaning-making system, the motivation when they get the insight of what needs to be different is totally, they're on fire, because now they see it, and now everything is clear, and they know what they need to do. And so it really is, the key is to work within their system and bring the professional knowledge where it fits within their world. And what doesn't fit, you don't use, obviously, because they're not going to use it anyway. I mean, how many times have you tried to intervene with a client and just bounced off of them? And that's the problem when we come at it from more traditional ways. Clients can reject, whatever we have to say or not. But when the insights and the ideas come from within their worldview, they own it. They're motivated. It's natural. It fits, and it cannot be unseen. So I want to share with you this story of one of the graduates from my program, Sarah, who, learned how to use a unifying framework at the very, very beginning of her professional journey. She was in graduate school. She was just starting her practicum. And, she doubted herself, had some of that imposter syndrome. But then one day, the CEO of her agency called her in and asked her what she was doing, because she said that Sarah had the highest retention rate in the agency, right? And Sarah's just like, oh my God, I don't even know if I can do this. Am I doing it right? And there are licensed people in this agency who've been doing this work for years. And what Sarah was doing was working within those clients' worldviews, and she ended up with the highest retention rate. And the CEO was like, what are you doing? And she's like, therapy that works, apparently. And so even at the, someone who's just starting out can get phenomenally, measurably better, retention rates here and outcome rates, because they are working from within the client's view. It is so, so powerful when you're able to do this. It really transforms, because so few of us ever have someone sit down and listen to us in our personal lives, or even when we're seeing a mental health professional, who really take the time to sit and listen from within our worldview. And when someone does that for you, you come back for more. And that is why Sarah has just had phenomenal success from her first months of doing treatment. She was retaining clients. Clients felt connected to her and that they were benefiting. And it's because she was able to synthesize all of the research base. Even before she finished her graduate program, she was able to use this unifying framework to really make measurable difference, even when compared to licensed people all around her. So the first part of this learning how to use the framework is doing a deep dive into the self of the clinician. So looking at who you are, how you show up, and how you live your day-to-day life in terms of how your personal journey, sets you up to be successful with your clients. And I don't think anyone can say that in this field that how your personal life does affect how you show up, and how you help your clients. And so this is such an important piece that we seem to be really afraid to talk about in this field. And I'm not sure why. Because there really is this paradox where the highest correlations we have with positive outcomes is the self of the clinician, who you are, how you show up in relationship. And it is almost entirely neglected in theory training and even the literature. And for some of this, we don't necessarily, I tell my students, you don't want your professors in your personal life. But on the other hand, we need to find models and ways for doing this that really sustain us in doing this work. And like I've said, this kind of get your self-care, which, that's not, I think we can do better. How about that? And so when looking at the self of the clinician and starting there, one of the first things, I teach clinicians is how to set a goal and how to achieve it, and really drawing upon a lot of motivational psychology in terms of mastering how to achieve a goal in a busy life, because we are asking our clients to make a lot of changes. And if we can't make those changes ourselves in our own lives, then we are in no position to be asking others to be doing that. And one of my favorite examples, I have a video with a teenager wanting to learn ADHD. Wanting to learn mindfulness for his ADHD. And it's with my Mastering Competencies in Family Therapy textbook series. And what we find out is to do 5 minutes of mindfulness in the morning, he needs to go to bed 30 minutes early. And that makes perfect sense to me, because I've tried to get 5 minutes in of mindfulness, and I understand that it takes reorganizing your life by at least 30 minutes to slow yourself down so you're willing to do it. And these are the micro habits or the habit stacking. And there are a lot of, what we know works to actually help people who have busy lives make changes. It's not even in our professional literature. We're going outside the field to find this information. And it's so important that we learn to do this ourselves, so that we're walking the talk. And that's, a lot of people talk about having imposter syndrome. And part of it is because they know that they can't make the changes that they're asking their clients to make. And that is a problem. And so, where I start with clients is with folks learning to do the unifying framework is to put together a lifelong plan of personal development, using positive psychology. We talk about the 6 areas of what we know everyone needs, us and our clients. We'll get to this for our clients a little later, for personal wellness. We need to have emotional, spiritual grounding to do this work well. We need our physical health and how to take care of our physical health. A lot of clinicians neglect this because we're so focused on the emotional. There's also our own relationships. This is so central. And for a lot of people in the field, this is a place that needs attention, because it's really hard to say no to other people, but we need to have balanced relationships of give and take. And this can be really, really hard to achieve for a lot of us in the field. And then there's the personal effectiveness, which is learning, largely how to manage time and money, which are they're finite. Those are finite resources. It's funny. The emotional world, we're all really professionally good at. It's like almost infinite, mothers, you have infinite love for your kids, right? Parents have infinite love for their kids. But time and money, boy, there's only a certain amount, and you really have to line those up with values and priorities for that to work well. And that's a whole different skill set that isn't automatic just because you're a mental health professional. Often this isn't an area that is super easy, because it is a much more black and white type of thinking. And can be a very difficult area to really manage well. It's a whole different skill set, and you need to have this to be an effective clinician. And I can tell when watching someone do a therapy session, listening to what they're telling their clients to do, I can tell right away whether or not they have the ability to manage finite resources like time and money at personal effectiveness, because they don't have, what they're suggesting to their clients. I know no one's going to be able to do over the next week. So this is such an important piece of being effective at doing this work well. And there's also just having a very clear, career development and achievement. And then also finally having quality of life, fun and adventure. There's so many professionals who need to work on that slice of the wellness pie. I'm always surprised by that. But it is an important part of being human and living this life, a life well lived. And so obviously none of us have all this going on at any one time in our lives. It varies tremendously. I think you're lucky if you got 1 or 2 pieces of the pie kind of working for you at a given time. And then often as you get those, together, life throws another curveball at you, and then you're working on something over here, and it ebbs and it flows. But that's the journey. And I think, it's not about getting to be perfect. I think that's a very unhealthy expectation of someone who does this work, but is being constantly on the journey, always moving forward slowly, incrementally in all these different areas of life, never neglecting one. And to just learn how to be to do the personal half of doing this work well. It is a lifelong journey. As you get better at doing it, I think it's a truly joyful journey. You're always growing, moving forward. It's really a joyful part of doing this work. And I think it's a real important one. And I think it's one that we all need to come together in our communities to talk more about. That is one of the things people love in a lot of my different programs, is we kind of get real about the human side of doing this work and talking about the human side of walking this path. And one of my graduates who's been in many of my programs, Evelyn, she talks about how coming to my programs is like, it's Dr. Gehart's finishing school for therapists, because we talk about these things. We talk about how to walk the walk, how to live the life, how we carry ourselves, our attitudes, our beliefs, how we engage with our own personal life, and how really important that is to be an effective and a truly authentic mental health practitioner. And so wherever you are in the world, I hope you find communities where you can have these conversations, because they are so important to our own humanity. It makes us better people. It makes us happier people. And it makes us better clinicians. And those two things are really woven together. Another licensed clinician who has gone through my courses, Leona, talks about being able to come into, a community where we talk about these issues of the self of the therapist. We touch on that personal side, and for her, what it did, it really solidified that she knows this is the career path for her, that she's in the right place, doing the right thing with her life. And that having that be like a deep down gut sense of, yes, I have found my calling, is so soul satisfying. I don't know what other word I have for it, but soul satisfying. And so it becomes a joy to do this work. And when you know that, because you've had conversations with others, really transparent, open conversations about the human side of doing this work, that really changes your whole journey, both personally and professionally. So now let's talk a little bit about collaborative connecting. It's one of my favorite parts. So I think all of us, when we get into graduate school, I know some folks listening are just in the early phases, you learn all about empathy, and that's where we start. And I think it's where we should start. It's a great place to start. But I will tell you, empathy is so not enough to do this work well. And if you still conceptualize building a relationship by building empathy with your clients, there is so many more effective ways to really take it up, to really enter their world in a much more profound way. Empathy is really just the starting point and the training wheels for building relationships that we know truly make most of the difference in therapy. Is this collaborative connection? The research is very clear. You can look at the common factors. You can look at the effective clinician research. This is easily half of what it takes to be a great clinician, which is why I call it the key. And over what I've evolved over the years and trying to explain how to do this well is, and again, I let go of all the jargon here, and I just found a whole new metaphor, which is what I call entering the client's holodeck, is the metaphor I use for the meaning-making system. The holodeck goes back to a Star Trek Next Generation episode. I don't know, they're 20, 30 years old. They're old. But there was a room on the spaceship where people could walk in, and you can see here, there is this little programming panel right here. So someone comes in and they can program a world. It can be a beautiful jungle. It could be a childhood scene. It could be a crime scene. It could be another planet. It could be whatever they want it to be. But the user goes in and programs this world. And it's a 3D world, unlike the virtual reality. Otherwise, I would use that as a much more contemporary metaphor, but it doesn't quite work because it's a 3D. You can see, feel, and touch it. And what we're doing when we are with our clients, if you really want to do effective work with clients, it is like entering their holodeck, the world that they have programmed. You're entering their meaning-making system, but you are totally blindfolded. So you have to grab their arm and you have to use what you have, which is your questions, your words, to ask questions to understand the logic of their world, how all the pieces come together. And the truth of it is, no matter how similar you may think they are to you, everyone's meaning-making system is totally different. And so, in their world, a lion could be an herbivore who grazes, and a gazelle can be an apex predator who's highly dangerous. And you just don't know till you ask. Rivers can flow through the middle, of the air. Clouds can always be found on the ground, and rocks can float. You just don't know till you ask. And so you are blindfolded. They are giving you a guided tour of how, so how does that relate to this? And I notice this is here, or do these two things always happen this way? And they're the ones who are explaining how this world works to you. And you are just infinitely curious, infinitely open about how this whole inner world works. And when you do this, you enter into something that Dan Siegel talks about as this neural kind of resonance with your clients, where you're so in tuned, trying to understand their world, right? That we talk about feeling in sync. And there's a certain amount of this, that is actually measurable, and the clients feel felt. And you know what that feels like when you feel like someone really gets you, right? You feel felt. You feel like they get it. You feel like they're there side by side with you. And there is this is actually comes down to something even physiological that we're starting to be able to measure. And you're just attuning to their world in such a profound way. This is why Sarah had the highest retention rate in her agency, blowing away all the licensed people. She learned how to do this. And when you can do this and enter their world, they understand their world in a whole different way. And just connecting and starting to understand their world truly is transformational for most clients. And they get so many insights. You don't even have to do the hard work. One of my students, she likes to say, oh my God, the best part is I figured out I don't have to come up with brilliant insights. Like it just tumbles out as you go on the tour of the holodeck. I'm like, I know, you're working way too hard. When I do my live supervision, I tell most of my people, you're working way too hard. Slow it down. It's, as you do the tour of the holodeck, everything just kind of comes tumbling out right there at your feet. The clients do it for themselves. So this is just so powerful when you can learn to work in this way. So the case conceptualization is by far, I think, the most mind-blowing part of the unifying framework, and especially for folks who are licensed, because those of you who are licensed, as you learn to do what we call the 4-level case conceptualization or framework, oh my God, this is jaw-dropping for the experienced folks. So what happens when you boil down 50 different theories at once? And I try to use as neutral of language as I can with minimal references to theory. Can't totally get away from it. Language always has a certain amount of bias. And you make it super, super easy to use. And the reason I use the simplest format I could was because for you to be in neurological attunement, neural resonance, totally attuned to your client in the present moment, 99% of your brain power is focusing on mapping the breadcrumb trail of meaning as you take the tour of the holodeck. That is where 99% of your brain power is, no matter how long you've been doing this work. That is what the focus is always on. So you don't have a lot of bandwidth left to be going through complex theoretical jargon and templates. So what I've done is created a system that is easy to use when you're in the moment and you're emotionally attuned right there with your client's meaning making. My mind never wanders. I've been doing this work for 30 years. And when a client is speaking, They have 100% of my attention. Mine never wander. It takes all of my brain power, because even the client who I saw last week just had an infinite number of life experiences that can change how their holodeck is programmed. So I really don't know from week to week what has the same meaning, what has changed. And so I'm always constantly tracking. I'm never coasting. You're never just floating. And it's always just like this amazing adventure. And so that is why this format is super, super simple. So 4 levels, because that's about all you can track when you're emotionally attuned to someone else. I don't care what you call it, depending on how you are primarily trained. You might like case conceptualization. You might like assessment. You might like the word filter. I don't care. Call it what you want to call it. But this is the part that does take a bit of practice. When I do teach people how to use this framework in my master course, this is where most of the training, because this is, even though it's 4 ball, it's 4 things to juggle, right? And so there are a few parts here, but conceptually, hopefully you'll walk away with this by the end of the day. So what we are always looking at is the symptom cycle, and that's the ebb and the flow, and that's very, very important. And then there are 4 different levels. And yes, each level has 2 parts. Okay, I'm synthesizing 50 theories. I got it down to 8. I think that's pretty darn good, but you only need to track 4 at a time. It was really usable, I promise you. But let's start with the symptom cycle. So so most of us are trained to focus on, get the frequency, duration, and severity of the symptom, which is what you need for diagnosis. It's really great for psychiatrists who are handing out meds, right? But for us, if we are trying to create change, we really need the whole ebb and flow. When is the symptom least severe? When does it get worse? When does it, at its worst? And then how do things kind of get back to some kind of normal? Because that ebb and flow usually gives you 100 clues as to what you need to do different, what you need to stop doing, what you need to do more of. So for us as mental health practitioners, we need the whole ebb and flow cycle of the symptom, not just frequency, duration, and severity. That's what psychiatrists need for, administering meds. And so for some symptoms like panic, homeostasis is normal. There is no trace of the symptom. And when they have their symptom, it's fully present. Where other symptoms like depression, right? Normally there's just less depression at certain parts of the day, or fewer depression symptoms at certain parts of the day, and more symptoms at other parts of the day. With couple conflict, you don't know. Sometimes the tension kind of stays there when it's normal, and sometimes it totally goes away. You got to ask. But understanding is you can use this both for intrapsychic and, interpersonal, which makes it super, super easy. So it is literally one way of assessing that you're going to use for all clients, all ages, all problems, intrapsychic, interpersonal, everything, one approach to assess it all. And so you're looking now at how this happens behaviorally. You're looking at the emotional level, and you track it, the whole ebb and flow emotionally. You're going to track all of the cognition and identity narratives, which is, so all of the thoughts that go through. And that last level is the societal or social location level. So how do all of their identities map on top of this cycle? So when symptoms are at their worst, how does their, social location and identities, how do they shift compared to when the symptom is at its worst? So these are the 4 basic levels. And so as clients are talking, I'm actually kind of filling in and mapping it across these 4 levels. Okay, this is the most complex we're going to get today, but so the 4-level assessment, each level does actually have 2 parts. So what you kind of do is, as clients talking, you will kind of open up, I need to go to level 1. I'm going to open up those 2 files. Then level 2, I open up those 2 files. So you're not juggling all 8 of these at once. So, but level 1 is you're mapping behaviorally what a video camera would see from the symptom to its least, to when it gets to its worst, and then when it kind of goes back to whatever normal or homeostasis is for them. And on top of that, you're going to see all of these complementary patterns that are just so fascinating. But that could be the pursuing and the distancing, the over-functioning, the under-functioning. It could be more masculine identity versus a feminine identity. Lots of different ways that we see complementary behaviors kind of mapping out across the symptom cycle. Like I said, I can write a whole book on that, and I will someday, I promise, because it's really fascinating. The next level is the emotional level. And so this is where, what are the emotions as we go through those behaviors? How do the emotions ebb and flow? Looking both at what are called attachment, attachment emotions. So a sense of being emotionally securely attached, feeling a sense of emotional safety, because most of us are pretty sane when we feel emotionally safe, and less, we act out more when we don't. And then looking at those secondary emotions, which can be, anger, sadness, guilt, how does all that ebb and flow on top of the cycle? The next level is cognitive. And this is where one piece can be thought of as cognitions, thoughts, and beliefs, kind of like out of our traditional cognitive therapies. But also related to that, when you string all those cognition, thoughts, and belief together, you get our identity narratives, right? Or you're in the family of origin stories that you have, those bigger narratives that still are embedded in them, those fundamental thoughts and beliefs. They're what's fueling our thought patterns. So you're going to map out both levels of those cognitions on top of the behavior, the emotions, and the cognitive. And then finally, this top level is the societal level. So how does, what are the dominant discourses, and also maybe your inner discourses around who you are in terms of, age, gender, education, race, ethnicity, sexual orientation, ability, how does that map on top of the cycle, which is certainly some of the most fascinating conversations you can have with a person, how our identity shifts when we're having our symptoms versus not. And then also, what does society say about people who have your problem? Those are very powerful narratives that are important to say out loud and to map onto all of this. And so this top level is really profound. It becomes a way to really be able to bring in a lot of the social justice and diversity work that so many of us are passionate about, but not quite sure how to do in day-to-day practice without it being awkward or weird or political or something uncomfortable. And talking about it on top of these four levels is a very natural and a way of talking about it, and really produces some it connects with something very profound in people that often motivates really rapid change. And so here you can look at kind of what I call the Rosetta Stone. So here are the 8 levels. And so here you can see how, how we start boiling down and synthesizing. I think this gives you a bit of a sense of how this works. So if you look at the bottom level, the behavioral level, you'll see that both all of our cognitive behavioral therapies, as well as our family therapies, they all do this very behavioral focus. And they also, both of those do spend a lot of time looking at the cognitive piece. They put that behavioral and that cognitive together. They do it in very different ways. It's very different language, but when you take all the jargon off, they are far more similar than they are different. And then you can also see here that the emotional level is really dominated by humanistic experiential folks. That's really where most of their attention goes to, the humanistic existentialists. But you can also see that psychodynamic folks really do talk about that attachment-based theory, as well as the cognitions and beliefs that are related to that. So you can see where psychodynamic and attachment theories kind of plug in there. And then finally, at the top, you'll see that level 4 is really dominated by postmodern feminist social justice approaches. And those are our newer approaches. And that is why in my, counseling theories textbook, every single, traditional approach has evolved to have a postmodern approach, because the traditional approaches just don't integrate it the way postmodern touches on these societal themes. And so, I've started sharing this with my students studying for licensure, and they're like, oh, yes, these things all kind of plug in together, and to see how how they map on, and how they're, even though they call these things, they use very different words to describe what they're doing, but they're touching on common essential elements of being human. So this is the Rosetta Stone of psychotherapy, as I like to call it. So, and what I have found as folks move through my courses and learn how to use a unifying framework, that those who have been licensed, especially, here we have Brenda, who is licensed as a counselor. She's also a registered nurse. She's had like tons of training. And being able to have this 4-level assessment is really, really profound, and she is experiencing what I'm experiencing, that being able to talk about that societal level and how it layers on top of the behaviors, the emotions, and the cognitions is really transformative. And it's really a game changer, and how clients understand themselves, how you understand your clients. And even when you're working with clients where you don't expect it, this is really profound and deep work that effortlessly and seamlessly gets layered in and allows you to talk about some issues that I think are very difficult, very politicized to talk about a lot of what's going on in society. And to have a way to do that is comfortable and easy and benefits all of your clients that you're working with is just super, super powerful. And Brenda and I have had the exact same experience. This is a total game changer. And I think what happens is people realize how their various identities are attached in such a profound way to whatever they're struggling with. It really motivates them to take action in ways they don't otherwise, quite frankly. And I have another, again, a licensed clinician who learned this unifying framework. And licensed people, to be honest, we're hard to train because, most of us, we learn our first year, we keep repeating it. We may go to a 4-day conference and go to 20 different workshops and find one thing that we're going to come home and use. That's honest to God what we do. We all know that. So to have someone who is licensed people saying that their work is transformed. And what happens for licensed people is that, you've gotten probably thousands of hours of training, and suddenly you are able to use all of it at once. It collapses down, and all of these thousands of hours where it's always like, oh my God, do I use this? Do I use that? Like this? It's like this, all these scattered, fragmented pieces of learning, they coalesce, and they just really coalesce into like, oh, I can use everything I know at once, and it's really easy, and it doesn't take a lot of bandwidth. That is transformational. And that is this thing that happens. It coalesces for folks who've already got thousands of hours of training. This is transformative because suddenly you can use it all at once. I don't know how else to describe it. So in terms of evidence-informed treatment planning, all I can say is that there really isn't an easy way for the average clinician to access this. You really have to be an academic like myself, or part of your job is needing to know this. And this is certainly an area it's also on my to-do list, is how to create ways for the average person to know this. So, because once you figure out and you take them through your client through the 4-level assessment, you've got to filter it through the evidence base to see what might work and what might not. And so I actually, as part of the, when I train people is, I have a huge chart that's, 10 pages long that summarizes everything, in the research so that it plugs in with what you've identified in that assessment. And that's important because there's certain problems that research is very clear. There are very few things that work, and there are other things where lots of different approaches work. And in terms of also doing that, I think one of the most important things people talk about when, learning this approach is being able to know how to rule things out. The medical correlates, chronic problems typically are going to have, chronic mental health problems typically have some kind of mental, physical correlate, as well as knowing, the neurological factors, trauma, and really being able to understand I would say the majority of clinicians don't know how to assess those personality disorders and how those all play in a way that's really useful and practical and respectful, because I do not like the term personality disorder. I can do a whole workshop on that. I'm not going to, but knowing when, where, and how to rule things out. And so this is where you then plug in those evidence-informed interventions. And so, not all theories work for all, situations. And there really is this, in the 20th century, there was a lot of individual clinician choice in what to use. In the 21st century, there's certain things we need to be able to offer our clients or refer them out for, because the literature is so clear on this. And for some of these, interventions, OCD is I think the poster child for this. 95% of people are going to only respond to, behavioral exposure-based therapies, very behavioral, not cognitive approaches. Couples therapy, there's a lot that the research has to say around working with couples, families, adolescents, ADHD. There are only certain things that are going to actually work. And a lot of our favorite theories don't work for some of these approaches. And so it is so important to be able to know this and at least be able to offer it to clients and have a meaningful, thoughtful discussion. Because you know what? How many clients come to me and say, oh my God, I've been to 10 therapists and you're the only one who knows the research on OCD. That's bad because our clients are able to Google and figure this out often better than we can. And that is a problem. That is why they want a TED Talk on a unifying framework. That's why clients want this, because it's not good that so many of us don't know some of the real basic information that clients now have access to. And again, for some of my licensed people who learn this unifying framework, it has been so helpful because not only is it coalescing all the theoretical knowledge, but being able to, Amalia here is talking about how just learning the framework was so confidence boosting because realizing that she can now explain why she is effective. She can put language and words and research and science to be able to explain to herself and her clients, and just knowing why what she does works. And so this is just such an important confidence boost that most licensed people probably don't even know that they want or need, but it just makes the task of doing this work so much easier, no matter how long you've been doing it and how successful you've been. Having this framework really opens up new horizons in different ways, solidifies your confidence, and just makes doing this job easy, even if you've already been doing it and been effective. So making lasting change, I know we're coming up on time, so I will move through this as quickly as I can, but I certainly think this is one of the most underdeveloped areas in the field, and there's so much more work to do here. And this is particularly important for marginalized clients, whether they're marginalized, in terms of classic factors like age, race, ethnicity, sexual orientation, gender identity, education, or whether it's little marginalization, you're just like an outlier in your family. Solidifying these positive narratives really is essential because the world's not going to mirror that back. And we as clinicians really need to cement those positive identity narratives in our marginalized clients. So in terms of long-term change, we look at three things. One is equanimity versus happiness. We look at the 4-level assessment of positive outcomes, and then what I call the 5 pillars of wellness. So equanimity, this really comes out of Buddhist psychology literature. And, so much of, at least the Western world, we focus on pursuit of happiness, really big here in the United States. But positive psychology is pretty clear. And so is, the Buddhist psychology. That's not what makes us happy. It is cultivating equanimity, the ability to move up and down gracefully with life's challenges is really the long-term goal. And then in this unifying framework, we're going to find things that actually work. And then we go back up through those 4 levels and the 8 different subtleties of them all to map all out what is working to really cement and solidify those positive narratives. And then we pull on what research has known for years as to what we need for lifelong emotional and physical wellness: healthy sleep, healthy eating, exercise, supportive relationships, and some form of self-regulation management for stress. Mountains of evidence. This should be part of standard practice in mental health. I hope someday it will be, but this is really key to the unifying framework as well. And Sarah, the one who has the highest retention rate, this is one of the things she says she uses all the time with her clients, is just talking about these 5 pillars, that clients love to talk about it. They're motivated, and it really helps, week to week, kind of fine tuning and getting these pillars and wellness pillars in place so that you can do some of that deeper work of mental health. So where to go from here? I really do think we are going to be evolving away from 500 different theories. I don't think anyone, theorists or clients, want that. I think we're going to continue finding ways to narrow the theory and research gap. and really finding ways to make every clinician highly effective is essential. And I think we're all ready for an easier way to do this that is more effective. But the truth is, it's going to take a long time because we have licensing board standards, we have universities, we have accrediting bodies, we have continuing education, and these are all locked into really traditional models of how we think about what we do. And the problem is none of these huge bureaucratic systems can change without the other changing at the same time. So it's not happening fast. Even at my own university, I still have to teach what my students need for the licensing exam, what the accrediting bodies want. That's still, I'm still locked into this system. And so it's going to be a slow evolution for the field. But individual practitioners who are excited and ready for this, you can transition at any time. And we have people entering the field who are starting now with this framework. We've been people doing it for years, using it to really just transform what they were already doing to allow them to use more of what they know at one moment in time. So if you are looking, if this excites you and this sounds like you're ready for this, there really is a much simpler way to do this work well and to do it quickly, no matter where you are on your professional journey. There are, the thing about the unifying framework for a lot of people is just reducing the stress, the burnout, the sense of imposter syndrome. Really being able to increase your own personal effectiveness and confidence is huge for a lot of people. Being able to improve your clinical outcomes, that is like the fastest way to build a practice. When people start having results with you that they can't get anywhere else, when you're the one person they walk into and you're able to explain what's going on, help get them to if there's a medical issue, to identify it, you get an incredible number of referrals. I will tell you that. And if you're interested, I offer this course only once or twice a year. There is a full 45-hour master course where I teach you how to use the unifying framework. There is a cohort opening right now. You can go to the Therapy That Works Institute. And because I'm launching while I'm doing this course, there is a coupon in the course you are going to have access to very shortly here. And so I welcome you to check it out if this excites you, because it really is a different way of doing things. It really makes doing this work well. It really pulls things together. And whether you're at the beginning of your career or you've been doing this for years, it's really fascinating to look how this one framework really makes doing this work easy. So at this point, I'm going to go ahead and pull some questions out of the chat. So yes, there's a question here from Art about what about common factors, therapeutic relationships. The common factors research, there are a couple different models, but that definitely overlaps with this whole concept of the unifying framework, in terms of there are certain things we know that work, and that is kind of built in and into this. And if you look at the common factors, right, the one most people cite looks at 40% of change, roughly, approximately, can be attributed to client factors. Another 30% is a therapeutic relationship, 15% is a therapeutic model, and 15% is hope. And, it's hope in that this therapist and this approach is going to work for me. So when you add that up, the hope up to, it's a part of the therapeutic relationship. That's 45%. And entering the client's worldview, that is, the client factors. And so when you look at the unifying framework, it maps very closely over on top of those, on top of the common factors models. So someone is just saying that LCSWs don't receive the same level of clinical theory and case conceptualization. What resources do I suggest for LCSWs to fill in this gap? I will tell you, I have had so many LCSWs go through my Therapy That Works course. And I've had actually a lot of folks who are both professional counselors and MFT go through the course and say, I got more from this course than I did in graduate school. But the LCSWs love this course because it really just teaches single framework to use all of these theories at once. I've had medical doctors learn the unifying framework, doctors who work with, for example, childhood diabetes, because they're like, I can't learn 500 theories to help my clients. I just want one framework to help my patients. So I've had medical doctors learn how to use this framework to help it's just the simplest way to do this work quickly, fast, and well. So this is certainly, I mean, it's less than what it's just a fraction of the cost of a graduate course, but it's 45 hours like a 3-unit graduate course. And I've had a lot of people say, boy, I learned more in this than I did my whole grad program. Because social workers learn how to work, they work at much larger levels of the system. And so just clinical social work is one of those. So this is probably, one of the fastest ways to learn how to do that. Okay, so let's see here. Mark is saying what I find different about appreciative inquiry and solution-focused therapy is looking for what works and to focus on the resources versus a problem focus. And so I will tell you, when you look at this unifying framework, the solution-focused people, they kind of just skip that module 3 or that step 3. They don't necessarily spend a lot. They do some assessing of the problem, but they very quickly go to that last part where they just assess the system. So if you like working solution focused, you can drop that assessment of the problem and focus on assessing what works, because that's very much what solution focused therapy is doing. And I'm hoping you're getting a sense of how this framework, like, oh my God, yeah, that's solution focused right there. They just don't do this part. Does working in clients' worldview mean mirroring? So that's a great question, Haruna, and it's related to mirroring. I think working within the client's view actually takes it even deeper than that, because you're not just mirroring back, you're kind of learning to understand their world from within their perspective. And I don't know if I would quite call that mirroring, but it's very similar. And the way I experience it, the best way, every word that they're speaking, like I said, it takes 100% of my attention, because it's not, mirroring tends to focus more on some of that emotional level. This is like, how do they put the pieces together? What's happening? And how do they make sense of that emotionally, cognitively, and with that societal level? So you're just tracking how the meaning unfolds. It's like a breadcrumb trail, and you have to get as much as you can. It's a discipline to get your own biases and assumptions out of the way. You can do some of it. Our biases are always there to some degree, but you're just focusing on that unfolding of meaning is the best way to describe it. Yes, yes, William, you will get the handout is online at therapythatworksinstitute.com in the Unifying Framework course itself. It'll be posted. Oh, I think I will be posting it here within minutes. I promise you that. Kathy Wexler, hello. She's actually one of my mentors. So curious about the neuroresonance, how it works with telehealth. So it's hard to get from a flat screen, but others say it's not very different. Kathy, that has definitely been my experience, because there are I think it's possible to get neuroresonance on a screen through telehealth. I didn't think so until the pandemic forced me to try to do it. So it does happen. It doesn't happen for everyone. And I think there's a lot of individual differences. It's certainly possible. It doesn't happen as easily, I think, as it happens in person, which is why I think having some in-person sessions really does help. That said, I have lots of clients who I get into neuroresonance with every week on telehealth. So, and I think there are some clinicians who do it more easily, and there are clients who do it more easily. I think there are some unique differences there. Yes, Nancy, you will get these slides. So Brian is saying, when unifying, would you ask the miracle question to a client that you believe is irrational? One approach is fantasy-based, the other is reality-based. Okay, so yeah, we got the 30,000-foot overview here, Brian, today. And so in this unifying framework, most of your questions actually come out of just being in the holodeck and following their client's meaning. And once you're in their holodeck, that is when you can bring in some of these interventions like the miracle question or irrational beliefs, depending on what kind of seems to fit with the client's construction of meaning. Because there are certain clients where, as you're listening to their holodeck, where it may feel like, yes, the miracle question like plugs into their world. Okay. We're not dragging them to the miracle question because I do that every first session, right? No, you plug in the miracle question when it makes sense in their world. And if they say it doesn't make sense, then don't use it, or those are, RABT, those are, cognitive questioning, that sort of thing. For certain clients, as they are talking, you can just tell that plugs naturally into their world, into their worldview, and it's really helpful. There are other clients where you're just going to annoy the heck out of them. So this is why I call it therapy that works, because it works, because you're working within if you work within their meaning-making system, change cannot not happen, to quote some of those classic annoying family therapists. It tumbles out of the conversation. Paula is asking, as a clinician, is there a source that we can gain research knowledge that is reputable and not confusing? Certainly. The most reputable place, one place you can always do, if you can get into an academic database like PsycInfo, you can get direct knowledge. There are, I'm trying to think, that's, where the researchers get them. I certainly do a module on this. Someday I'll do a class on this where I summarize it all for you. There is a good book by Jay LeBeau it's called Research for Psychotherapists. I also recommend for that. So Matthew is asking, is practice behind research or do they evolve concurrently? Standard practice is easily 20 or more years behind. I have talked to clinicians who say things that are 50 or 60 years out of date, who are professors or giving continuing education lectures. So yes, practice is way behind research in this field. And I think, it used to just be 20 years. I think that gap is growing and it's a huge problem. I'm working on it. That's why it's built into my Unifying Framework Therapy That Works course. I do plan to do more work in this area, but yes. Matthew, is a high retention rate necessarily proof of an effective therapist? Not necessarily. You could be super nice, but to have the highest retention rating across multiple clients in an agency when you're new, I think you're doing something right. And people are coming back and they're making change, especially in a large agency. That is really impressive, and something good is really happening there. Because if you can't retain your clients, change certainly isn't happening. So I would say that high retention is certainly a sign of a highly effective clinician, because not having good retention, you can't make progress. Is there a good resource to learn how to treat personality disorders? What is the best way? That is, I don't know of a good resource. I think identifying them is a very difficult thing to do well, but it's key to actually being highly effective. And that's something I think the vast majority of clinicians are not trained to do in our field. So let's see. In terms of creating lasting change, I know we talked about 3 of those different things, but that lasting change is really solidifying a positive narrative identity. So you mentioned real life sustained change. Are there that there was little research? Can you share what research? Oh, well, what I mean by the sustained change is that there are certain things that we all need to do to maintain our wellness, okay? And also, I would say that a lot of our theories talk about reducing symptoms. We don't talk a lot about helping our clients create lives that maintain their gains that they got in therapy. We don't do as much of that in our theories. Most of the theoretical approaches just talk about reducing symptoms. And how do you make that maintain that change long-term is, we have a very high recidivism rate. Over half of our clients relapse, and so that's really high. So clearly there's tons of work that needs to be done around this. So there's a question about my course, whether or not it counts. who might short of state requirements, what class counts to wait, is it? I got to read the whole question. I'm trying to skim it. For a student who's nearing graduation who might be a few hours short of state requirements for semester credits, would your class count towards those credit requirements? Well, I run a training institute, so certainly I can't issue university credits, but if you have a university who, I do partner with universities to offer, it's a 45 hours of training, which is exactly a 3-unit course. And so you can take it as credit it. You can work with the university to have this credited as related to an independent study is very possible. But yes, my new course is launching. It's a 5-month, all intensive training that deals with both a personal journey as well as learning how to use this framework. And many people in graduate school just love it because it just makes it so much simpler. And for those folks who have been licensed and experienced, what happens is just everything becomes simpler and easy to use. It consolidates all of your knowledge so that you can be even more effective than you have been, use more of what you know at once. Really, I don't know how else to say it, with using less brain power. It's just so simple. I don't know how else to describe it. Okay. Thank you so much. Okay, let's see. I believe I have answered most of those questions. I will see if there is anything else here in the chat. Let's see if there are any questions coming in from YouTube. I don't know if Audrey, if you're able to put those into the Q&A, that would be awesome.
There weren't any YouTube questions, so we're good.
Okay, awesome. Okay, so yes, we are getting all these slides will be in the course for you. Okay. Thank you, everyone. I don't have a way to get the closed captions to you, but hopefully you'll be able to follow along with the PowerPoint. So thank you, everyone. Mahalo. Be well. Thank you. And thank you. And if anyone has any questions for me, you can go ahead and put any last questions into the chat. Let's see. Got a question here. Is it the same as the spring course? So yeah, in the spring, I am launching my Therapy That Works Unifying Framework course. It is a 5-month course that teaches you how to use this unifying framework. There is a lot of live training. We work with clients. There is a level 1, and for those of you who have graduated, I am launching the level 2 course. So that when I do my TED Talk and people ask, how do I find someone who knows unifying framework, I can refer them to a list. Yes, life coaches can absolutely take this course. The Therapy That Works course for life coaches. This is an incredible opportunity. I have had life coaches go through because, again, it synthesizes a lot of the mental health interventions, knowledge base, makes it really easy to use, and certainly can be within that life coaching sphere. In terms of getting CEs for today, you are going to log into the Unifying Framework course at therapythatworks.com. And so you can /login. It'll take you to all your courses. And we will be opening the CE module within the next hour or so. So thank you. Okay, awesome. Janelle is looking forward to joining the next cohort. And mahalo, and thank you to you coming from Hawaii. Let's see here. Any other comments? I'm glad you all have enjoyed this presentation. And I am just so excited that you're here to listen and learn about it, because I really do think we're entering a real exciting time where we can be highly effective in doing this work, while also really making it easy to do this work well and being able to synthesize the research, the knowledge, the evidence base in a way when society really needs us to bring on our A game right now. And I really think that the unifying framework is the fastest way to bring on, to really step into that. Thank you so much. And if you are interested in the course, make sure you get the coupon. It is going to save you $300, and we will make sure that is in your course portal. Thank you so much. Oh, there's the coupon code right there. Unifying Psych is the coupon code. And so certainly make use of that. And if you're interested in the course, please do try to, check it out. When it will be offered again. I offer it at least once a year, and sometimes I'm able to offer it again in the fall. I don't know at this point. Basically, I have a big book project, and if I can get it done over the summer, I'll offer it in the fall. And if not, I will offer it next spring. So hopefully there's some great ways to, make this course affordable. So hopefully you can find a way to make it work. And the schedule is super flexible. We actually build it around who registers. So we meet a couple times a month to do live training. It is really incredible. We do use the virtual reality simulated clients, sort of like our own little holodeck, but it gives us a chance. We all get to work with one client. We get to take turns. It's totally mind-blowing. Really, everyone's favorite part of the class is that working together with a client. It is just so much fun. So, okay. Any other questions or comments, please put them in the chat. And otherwise, I really hope you're walking away with a new vision of how you can do this work, both your personal journey, how, I think so many of us find lots of theories that we like. And I think so many people just love being able to oh my God, I do get to use all the theories that I love, and they all do kind of come together. Because what is so powerful when you learn to use that 4-level assessment, whether it's the problem, and I'll tell you, so for the solution, we do the exact same thing. And that's what makes it so ridiculously easy to use this model. But you're using all 50 theories at once, and it really is just simple. I don't know how else to say it. And I think what's so beautiful is when you learn to use this 4-level conceptualization, what happens for you and clients, is that all the pieces just kind of come together. And all I can say is that solutions just tumble out of the conversation. And so, and it doesn't matter how simple it is, whether you're talking about parenting. I was recently talking with someone about parenting. And just as we were talking through the family conflict, right? The blow up, the meltdowns, the tantrums, as we went up through the 4 levels, it was like the client's just talking, going, oh my God, I didn't notice that. Oh yeah, that always happens before the meltdown. Oh yeah, and that's exactly how I respond. That probably isn't what I need to be doing. I don't have to say anything, man. It's just so easy. It just kind of tumbles out of the conversation. Yesterday I was also talking with someone, around very sensitive and politicized, gender identity. And this is someone who identifies LGBTQ, her whole life, but she experiences it, and her gender identity is just very different, even from within the LGBTQ community. So she feels marginalized within the community because, for her, the pronoun thing is actually very alienating. It's not helpful. And so as we're talking through all of this, even, this very, political, profoundly personal, very unique, even as she's talking, she's like, oh my God, as I'm saying this, I can see how all my life experiences, my early, experiences, my work experiences, my partnership, my friend, you just see how it all comes together and become so clear for her. And I'm not having to say anything, all that profound. And yet I think both of us were having this incredible, existential conversation about what it means to be human, and how we experience, ourselves, and how others experience us. And there's so many complex facets, and how all that comes together in a way that was just, there was incredible acceptance and harmony and insight and just clarity on what the next right step is. And just a peace that comes over for the clients when all of this is coming together. And when you as a clinician know You don't have to make all this happen, that it comes out of the conversation. It really is a very, very liberating experience. Oh, I see more questions have popped in here. So let me just check this out. Someone's asking, is there a clear advantage around getting an LPC in addition to an MFT if you want to move from California? Oh, this is a very United States question. And, for portability, it can be very useful to have both licenses because different states have very different rules around each. But hopefully, again, as the field becomes more and more unified, hopefully, I'm hoping that will be less of an issue. Oh, Jalen Jaffe is asking, how do you fit in writing plus teaching plus clients plus a personal life and research? That is actually what I teach in the personal effective module of my course. And, I basically, the method that I teach everyone who goes to my course is you start with big year-long or lifelong goals, and we break those down to 5 minutes, increments, and we break that down even to a 5 to 60 second placeholder. And there's a whole system for personal effectiveness that I use. I like to use, and then I start, doing the habit stacking in there. But yeah, that's the personal effective research and knowledge base that we don't have enough of in our field, which is why I put it into this unifying framework, because we really should be doing more of it. So a lot of what people get out of this is like, oh my God, I got my life finally back on track. I have people who, get their health back on track, start meditating, stop drinking, get a budget together, learn how to actually start saving and investing. There is a lot of just that personal thing, personal element of being human. And when you get those parts of your life on task, that personal, effectiveness, your life feels like it is on track, and you're learning all of the little secrets to make these things happen. It really does feel good. It's very empowering. So it really is an incredible, incredible personal journey. And, we got to at least touch on a couple of the success stories from my people who go through this unifying framework, portion, that personal piece, learning how to live your life in a way that really helps you thrive, that, it's great to make your job easier, and everyone loves that part of it all, and to feel more confident professionally. But when your personal life really comes online, you're able to set goals and achieve them and make things happen in your personal life. That really, it really is liberating and uplifting and life transformational, and to be able to have these conversations. And so many of the people who've gone through my programs are like, this is the only community where we can talk about these things in a safe way. This really private part, this difficult part of how do you do this work as a human, as an imperfect human? How do you do this work? And I think that's a very important question that I hope more professionals keep answering. But how do we do this very profoundly a personal side of doing this job, so that we feel uplifted, that we feel that we feel like we are totally being able to bring our full selves, our authentic selves, and we're proud of the authentic self that we bring to this process. And I've had so many people, over the years, hundreds of people just tell me, because you just are open and honest about what the human side of this journey is, my confidence is better. I'm a better clinician. I'm a happier person, and my life is in a much better place. And so, so that is just so, it is such an important part of doing this work well. And I hope, whether you find it, here with some of my courses or someplace in your, in your own personal network, it is so important to have those safe spaces to talk about how to do this work well. So yes, if you are interested in joining, the cohort that is launching. We are launching this through registration is going to be open through February 15th, 2015. So get in there as soon as you can to let us know what times work best for you. We are building a schedule that works for the Therapy That Works course. And because we do have folks, who will be joining from around the world. So we want to make sure we can make sure it works for everybody. Yes, you can just go to Therapy That Works Institute, go to the Therapy That Works page, and you can read more about it. And you can also go ahead and register there. So thank you, everyone. I am hoping, let's see. Oh, I got some more. Okay. So yes, if you want to know whether or not to confirm whether, yes, we did have an early registration in December. So if you want to know whether or not you are confirmed, please email friendlyhelp@dianegayhart.com and we'll confirm your enrollment. So the CE will be opened in about in about an hour. Okay. Yes. And so, Michael, yes, the course that is launching is we launched a version of this course last spring, 2022. Okay. Awesome, everyone. So yes, if you took this course in 2022, there is a level 2 course that is opening up. Hopefully you got the email about that. It just went out yesterday with both the courses are launching at once, because I am working on getting an international directory of folks who are trained in the Unifying Framework. In the case that I am on a TED Talk stage and someone's like, where do we find therapists who know how to use all this Unifying Framework and all this research? And I need to be able to give people a list. So we are working on creating an international directory of folks who know how to use the Unifying Framework. So if you are interested, please sign up. You can sign up for level 1. And it's after completing the level 2 course that you get onto the international directory there. So those of you who are eligible, you got your own private email to join the advanced course at least at this point in history. Excellent. Okay, everyone. So I hope this has been inspiring. I hope you are fired up. I hope you got some insights. I hope, I know many of us have sat in workshops and we hear about a new theory and you're like, oh my God, that sounds so lot like this other theory I know. And you want to raise your hand and the instructor, gives you a response. Well, it's a little bit different than that in this way. So I hope this workshop was a little bit validating and letting you know that, yes, indeed, there is some real overlap. Theoretically, they are different, but what you're doing in the room is actually the same thing. And that's what this framework is. It is a system for doing. It is not, a theory because, it's boiling down all these different theoretical constructs into very practical in-session behaviors that allow you to really draw on a maximum amount of theory and research at the same time so that you can really, be, as effective as humanly possible with your clients. And the world is ready for this. If TED Talks want to hear about this, I think the world really is ready for a unifying framework for psychotherapy and counseling. And quite frankly, we are, because I think the most beautiful thing that comes out of this is just the peace of mind you get, as a clinician, having that clarity and really being able to do this work easily. And as silly as that sounds, hopefully you heard from some of my, licensed folks today where you can be doing this work for years and, oh my God, it's jaw-droppingly it's easier than it's ever been. And it's just having that simplicity. And it's that simplicity that you need in order to have that kind of neural resonance with the client that really gets you the positive outcomes. Okay, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me. I wish you all the best, no matter where you are on the globe. Hopefully you're inspired and fired up and have some confidence about how to move forward in terms of how you think about doing this work well, how you connect with your clients, and just a vision of what is possible for you as a human being at a personal level and at a professional level. And I really think we are looking at, a very different future for this field that is far less fragmented, a lot more working together, supporting each other. I'm really feeling like we're much more on the same team. So, wishing you all the best, and please email us if you have further questions, and take care and have an amazing day or evening. Bye-bye.